The night sky over Carsonville, Ohio, was a bruise of purple and orange, but for 17-year-old Elias Navarro, it felt like the world was caving in. His father's fist still stung on his cheek as he stumbled down the dirt road, backpack slung over one shoulder, tears blurring the stars. Faggot. His father had spat, the word a blade that cut deeper than the bruises, banishing him from the only home he'd ever known. Elias clutched the crumpled Polaroid of him and Jamal, his secret first love, taken behind the old grain silo where they'd shared stolen kisses. Carsonville was a small, Rust Belt town where being gay wasn't just frowned upon. It was a sin preached from pulpits and enforced with fists. That night in 2005, as Elias fled, he swore he'd never return to a place that hated him for who he loved. But promises made in pain don't always hold. 20 years later, Elias Navarro would walk those same streets again, not as a broken boy, but as a man ready to claim the city as its mayor. His journey back wasn't just a homecoming. It was a reckoning, one that would unravel secrets, heal old wounds, and rewrite the story of a town that had once chased him away. Elias's sneakers crunched against the gravel as he walked the 5 miles to the Greyhound station, the weight of his father's rejection sinking heavier with every step. Carsonville's main street was quiet, save for the hum of cicadas and the occasional pickup truck rattling by. He could still hear his mother's sobs through the screen door, her pleas for him to just be normal echoing in his mind. Normal. The word tasted like ash. At the station, he bought a one-way ticket to Chicago with the $87 he'd saved from mowing lawns. The cashier, an older woman with kind eyes, slipped him a granola bar. "You look like you need it, kid," she said softly. Elias nodded, unable to speak, and boarded the bus. As it pulled away, he pressed his forehead against the cool window, watching Carsonville shrink into a speck of regret. Chicago was a shock of noise and color. Skyscrapers loomed like giants, and the streets pulsed with people who didn't care who you loved as long as you paid your rent. Elias found a youth shelter, then a job bussing tables at a diner in Boys Town, the city's vibrant gay neighborhood. It was there, amid rainbow flags and drag shows, that he met Leo Carter, a 20-year-old barista with a quick laugh and a knack for sketching portraits on napkins. Leo was everything Carsonville wasn't: open, fearless, and unapologetically himself. One night, over cheap beers at a dive bar, Leo leaned across the table and kissed Elias, right there in front of everyone. No one stared. No one threw bottles. Elias felt his heart unclench for the first time in years. "You're safe here," Leo whispered, and Elias believed him. But safety was a fragile thing. Elias carried Carsonville's scars, flinching at loud voices, waking from nightmares of his father's rage. Leo, patient but persistent, urged him to talk about it. "You can't outrun your past," he said one evening, sketching Elias's profile by candlelight. "But you can face it." Elias wasn't ready. Not yet. By 2010, Elias had earned a degree in political science from a community college, fueled by late-night conversations with Leo about justice and change. He landed a job with a Chicago nonprofit advocating for LGBTQ+ youth, channeling his pain into purpose. He spoke at rallies, organized fundraisers, and helped kids like him find their footing. But Carsonville lingered in his dreams, a ghost he couldn't shake. One rainy afternoon, Elias got a call from his sister, Maria, the only family member who'd kept in touch. "Dad's sick," she said, her voice tight. "Lung cancer. He's asking for you." Elias froze, the phone heavy in his hand. Leo, sitting across from him, reached for his hand. "You don't owe him anything," Leo said. But you might owe yourself closure. Elias didn't go. Not then. The wound was too raw, the fear too deep. But Maria's call planted a seed. Carsonville wasn't just a place. It was a piece of him, jagged and unresolved. He started following the town's news online, reading about its struggles. A shuttered factory, rising opioid deaths, a mayor embroiled in corruption scandals. The more he read, the more he wondered if he could make a difference. Not just for himself, but for the kids still hiding in Carsonville's shadows. In 2023, Elias stood at the edge of Carsonville's town square, heart pounding like he was 17 again. The air smelled of diesel and damp grass, unchanged in 2 decades. Leo stood beside him, his sketchpad tucked under his arm, his presence a steady anchor. They'd driven from Chicago in a rented van, their belongings packed tightly in the back. Elias had decided to run for mayor, a decision that felt both insane and inevitable. The town had changed, but not enough. The diner where Elias used to sneak milkshakes was now a vape shop, but the church on Main Street still flew a faded flag with a cross. As Elias and Leo walked through town, heads turned. Whispers followed. "That's the Navarro kid," someone muttered from a porch. "The one who got kicked out." Elias's campaign began in a rented storefront, its windows plastered with posters reading, "Carsonville for All." He and Leo knocked on doors, handed out flyers, and faced a spectrum of reactions. Some doors slammed, others opened wide. At a town hall, Elias stood before a skeptical crowd, his voice steady but his hands trembling. "I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong here," he said. "I'm running to make sure no one else feels that way." The incumbent mayor, Tom Hargrove, was a burly man with a penchant for dog whistle politics. He called Elias an outsider with big city values, a thinly veiled jab at his sexuality. At a debate, Hargrove sneered, "Carsonville's got traditions. We don't need Chicago's agenda." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Elias met Hargrove's gaze. "Tradition doesn't mean hate," he said. "It means community, and I'm here to build one for everyone." Leo, meanwhile, documented the campaign through sketches and social media posts, capturing Elias's fire and the town's divide. One night, as they lay in their motel room, Leo showed Elias a drawing of him speaking at the town hall, his face lit with determination. "This is who you are," Leo said. "They can't take that away." But not everyone was ready for change. Late one night, someone spray-painted FAG across the campaign office's window. Elias stared at the word, his chest tight, memories of his father's voice flooding back. Leo grabbed a sponge and started scrubbing. "They're scared," he said. "Scared of what you represent." Elias joined him, the two of them washing away the hate under a streetlight's glow. The vandalism was just the beginning. As Election Day loomed, Carsonville's tensions boiled over. Anonymous flyers appeared in mailboxes, accusing Elias of corrupting the town's youth with his lifestyle. At a high school football game, a group of men heckled him from the bleachers, their slurs cutting through the crisp autumn air. Elias kept his head high, but each attack chipped away at his resolve. Leo, ever the optimist, turned the hate into fuel. He organized a rally in the town square, where allies, some openly queer, others straight but supportive, gathered with signs reading "Love is Love" and "Elias for Equality." A young woman named Sarah, a 19-year-old barista who'd come out as bisexual the year before, took the microphone. "I was scared to be myself here," she said, her voice trembling. "Elias makes me believe I don't have to hide." The crowd cheered, and Elias felt a spark of hope reignite. But hope came with hurdles. Hargrove's campaign dug into Elias's past, unearthing a decades-old police report from the night his father had thrown him out. Unstable runaway, Hargrove called him at a public forum, waving the document like a trophy. Elias's stomach churned, but he refused to back down. "I ran because I wasn't safe," he said, his voice steady. "I'm back to make sure no one else has to run." Behind the scenes, Elias's sister, Maria, became his fiercest advocate. Now a nurse with a family of her own, she canvassed neighborhoods, sharing stories of the brother who'd never given up. "He's one of us," she told skeptical voters. "He knows our pain because he's lived it." Maria's support wasn't just strategic, it was personal. She'd spent years regretting her silence when their father banished Elias, and now she was making amends. One evening, Maria invited Elias and Leo to her home for dinner. Her kids, curious and unfiltered, asked why Elias had left Carsonville. He hesitated, then told them a softened version of the truth. "Sometimes, people don't understand who you love, but that doesn't make your love wrong." Her youngest, a 10-year-old named Lucas, hugged him. "I'm glad you're back, Uncle Elias," he said. The words nearly broke him. As the campaign intensified, Elias faced his father's ghost head-on. He visited the hospital where his father, now frail and tethered to oxygen, lay dying. The old man's eyes widened when Elias entered. "Didn't think you'd come," he rasped. Elias sat beside him, searching for words. "I didn't come for you," he said finally. "I came for me, to let go." His father said nothing, but a tear slipped down his cheek. Elias left the room lighter, not forgiven, but free. The final weeks of the campaign were a blur of speeches, door-knocking, and sleepless nights. Elias and Leo worked tirelessly, fueled by coffee and conviction. At a community-centered debate, a pivotal moment arrived. A woman in the audience, her voice shaking, asked Elias, "How can we trust you won't abandon us again?" The room fell silent. Elias took a deep breath. "I left because I had to survive," he said. "I'm here now because I believe Carsonville can be better, for all of us." The crowd erupted, some in applause, others in jeers. But the moment shifted something. Polls tightened. Young voters, energized by Elias's message, registered in droves. A local pastor, Reverend Clare, broke ranks with the town's conservative clergy to endorse him, preaching about love and redemption to her congregation. "Elias Navarro is proof that God's grace works through all of us," she said, her words spreading like wildfire. Hargrove, sensing the tide turning, doubled down. He released an ad implying Elias's policies would destroy family values. But the attack backfired. A group of mothers, led by Maria, organized a counter-campaign, sharing stories of their LGBTQ+ children and the need for a mayor who understood. "We're not afraid anymore," one mother declared at a press conference, her arm around her trans daughter. On election night, Elias and Leo stood in their campaign headquarters, surrounded by volunteers. The results trickled in precinct by precinct. When the final tally flashed on the screen, Elias Navarro 52%, the room exploded in cheers. Leo pulled Elias into a kiss, tears streaming down both their faces. "You did it," Leo whispered. "We did it," Elias corrected, his voice thick with emotion. Elias's first day as mayor was anything but quiet. He stood on the steps of City Hall, the January wind biting at his face, as he took the oath of office. The crowd was a mosaic of Carsonville. Old farmers in flannel, young activists with rainbow pins, families clutching coffee cups against the cold. Leo stood at his side, his sketchpad replaced by a proud smile. "I, Elias Navarro, swear to serve all of Carsonville," Elias said, his voice carrying over the murmurs. His first act was signing an executive order banning discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity in city hiring. The move drew applause from some and glares from others, but Elias was undeterred. "This is for the kids who feel like I did," he told a reporter later, his eyes fierce. "No one should have to hide to belong." The work was grueling. Carsonville faced a crumbling infrastructure, a shrinking budget, and a community fractured by years of neglect. Elias dove in, securing grants for job training programs, revitalizing the downtown with small business incentives, and launching a youth center with LGBTQ+ support services. He walked the streets daily, listening to residents, even those who'd voted against him. "You're not what I expected," one skeptic, an older mechanic named Roy, admitted over coffee. "Keep proving me wrong." Leo, now a community organizer, spearheaded art projects to beautify the town. His murals, vibrant depictions of Carsonville's diversity, adorned once dreary walls. One, painted on the youth center, showed two hands clasped, one brown, one pale, with the words "Love builds bridges" carved into a bench nearby. It became a selfie spot for teens, a quiet symbol of change. Not everyone embraced the new Carsonville. A small group of protesters picketed City Hall, waving signs about traditional values. Elias met them calmly, offering to talk. Most refused, but one, a retired teacher named Margaret, stayed. Over tea in his office, she confessed her fear. "I just don't understand this world anymore." Elias listened, then shared his story, not to convert her, but to connect. "I don't want to erase your world," he said. "I want to make room in it." Margaret didn't change overnight, but she left with a thoughtful nod. Months later, Elias's father passed away. At the funeral, Maria squeezed his hand as they stood by the casket. "He was proud of you in his own way," she said. Elias wasn't sure he believed her, but he felt a weight lift. He'd built a life bigger than his father's hate, a legacy of love and resilience. One evening, Elias and Leo walked through the town square, now alive with food trucks and string lights for a community festival. A young man, maybe 16, approached them shyly. "I'm gay," he blurted, then froze, as if expecting a blow. Elias knelt to his level. "You're perfect as you are," he said. The boy's eyes welled up, and he hugged Elias before running off. Leo squeezed Elias's hand. "That's why we're here," he said. As mayor, Elias didn't erase Carsonville's past, but he reshaped its future. The town that once chased him out now flew pride flags alongside American ones. At the festival's close, Elias took the stage, Leo at his side. "This is our Carsonville," he said, his voice ringing with pride. "A place where everyone belongs." The crowd roared, and in that moment, Elias knew he'd come home. Not to the town he'd left, but to the one he'd helped create. Elias's first year as mayor was a whirlwind of progress and pushback. The youth center opened its doors to a line of teens, some curious, others desperate for a safe space. Elias made a point to visit weekly, sharing pizza and stories with kids who reminded him of his younger self. One girl, 15-year-old Mia, confessed she was trans but hadn't told her parents. Elias connected her with a counselor and promised to be there when she was ready to come out. "You're not alone," he told her, and her grateful smile stayed with him for days. The town's economy showed signs of life. A new tech startup, lured by Elias's incentives, opened a small office downtown, hiring locals who'd lost jobs when the factory closed. Leo's murals drew tourists, and a queer-owned bakery became a local favorite, its rainbow cupcakes a quiet rebellion against the old guard. But progress wasn't universal. At a city council meeting, a proposal to include LGBTQ plus history in school curriculums sparked heated debate. "We're not San Francisco," one councilman snapped. Elias countered calmly, "We're Carsonville, and our kids deserve to know their history." The measure passed narrowly. Personal challenges lingered. Elias and Leo's relationship, though strong, faced strain from the campaign's aftermath. Long hours left little time for quiet moments, and Elias's nightmares of his father's rejection resurfaced. One night, after a heated council meeting, Elias broke down in their apartment. "What if I'm not enough?" he asked, voice raw. Leo pulled him close. "You're more than enough. You're changing lives." They stayed up talking, rebuilding their connection, and Elias realized love wasn't just romance. It was showing up again and again. Maria became a bridge to the community's skeptics. She hosted potlucks where neighbors met Elias not as the mayor, but as her brother, the kid who'd once built forts in their backyard. Slowly, perceptions shifted. Roy, the mechanic, invited Elias to speak at his Rotary Club. "Didn't vote for you," he admitted, "but you're doing right by us." Elias grinned. "I'll take it." By Elias's second year as mayor, Carsonville was unrecognizable from the town that had exiled him. The annual Pride Festival, once unthinkable, drew thousands, with families and allies dancing alongside queer locals. Elias and Leo, now engaged, led the parade, their hands clasped as confetti rained down. The boy who'd once fled in shame now stood tall, his ring glinting in the sun. Challenges remained: budget fights, old grudges, and the occasional hate mail tested Elias's resolve. But he leaned on his team: Maria, Leo, Reverend Claire, and a growing coalition of supporters. When a national news outlet covered Carsonville's transformation, they dubbed it "the little town that could." Elias framed the article, hanging it in his office beside Leo's sketch of their first rally. One spring morning, Elias received a letter from Mia, the trans teen from the youth center. She'd come out to her parents, who'd embraced her, thanks to the community Elias had fostered. "You made it possible for me to be me," she wrote. Elias read the letter to the city council, his voice breaking. "This is why we fight," he said, "for every Mia out there." As his term neared its end, Elias reflected on his journey. He'd returned to Carsonville not for revenge, but for redemption. Not just for himself, but for a town that had lost its way. He and Leo planned to marry in the town square, under the same stars that had once witnessed his exile. The ceremony would be a celebration of love, resilience, and a community reborn. On Election Day, as Elias prepared to run for a second term, he stood on his childhood street, now lined with pride flags. Leo joined him, sketching the scene. "You've changed this place," Leo said. Elias shook his head. "We changed it. Together." Carsonville wasn't perfect, but it was home. A home Elias had fought for, not with fists, but with courage and love. As he looked out at the town he'd once fled, he knew he'd fulfilled a promise to himself, to make a place where no one would ever be chased out again.